I think you're going to really like this episode with Amy Folan of Central Michigan. Really excited about what we talked about. Two things that really stood out as themes that I've been talking about, and they're both related to the sponsors I brought on. So, PILYTIX, we talked about donor fatigue a lot and what you can do with it. Wait till you hear what Amy has to say about donor fatigue. And yes, it is real, but she talks about really good strategy of what kind of her philosophy is. The other one is a question that's brought to you by AD Vantage. And in this question, we go through her decision process and thought processes around hiring her football coach this past off season that has led to a very successful year for Central Michigan Chippewa football this season. We talk about her really long journey from being at Texas for almost 20 years and then what ultimately led her to then try and go be an athletic director about 6 years ago now at Central Michigan. She's had fundraising records broken year after year there. Talks about how big the alumni base is at Central Michigan, which is something I wasn't aware of. But you're going to get a lot out of this episode. I think if you're a traditional candidate in college athletics, you're going to feel encouraged about kind of your own journey. And Amy's doing great things, and I think I enjoyed the conversation off the camera just as much as I did here on the camera. So thanks for listening and subscribing to Higher Ed Athletics presented by PILYTIX. Well, before we get into Central Michigan, I will mention you were at Texas for nearly 20 years before this opportunity, and you're going into your sixth year. So I like to study AD hires. I keep a D1 AD hiring trends and tracker on my website for the last 5 years. So because I'm a nerd like that, but I like to study it and sort of trace back the backgrounds of who was hired. And it's not often, especially right now, that someone takes the route you took it, where you're at Texas for, almost 20 years and then goes and lands an AD job. I'm sure you had opportunities along the way, but was there something that clicked while you were at Texas or just in your own career goals that made you want to finally pursue leading your own department?
I think I'm just a really slow, steady Travis. And this is no knock on my alma maters, but when I was a student athlete at UConn, I played soccer there. At first, I thought I wanted to do sports broadcasting. And then Lou Perkins was the AD, Jeff Hathaway was the senior associate. And I kind of said, hey, I think I might want to do that. I think there were 4 women at the time and somebody laughed. And I'm just really stubborn, Irish Catholic upbringing. And I wanted to be an AD since about my junior year in college. And I worked in the compliance office. And Noreen Morris, who was the first person to come up to me when I was a student athlete and ask me how I was doing, which I realized the small and the big things make a huge impact. She is a commissioner still today. And we laugh because she told me I should do something else. And I told her, no, I think I want to do this. But I was on the path and she kind of mentored me. And they said, look, Roy Kramer, who's a former CMU football coach, was the SEC commissioner, and they were federating the NCAA. And she said a lot of the powers in football, you might want to look at a football experience. That's partly why I went to Georgia. Well, main reason I looked at an SEC football experience, went down there, worked in their compliance office, got SEC certified in compliance. So I knew that would be a good step in being an AD. Was there for a few years. Then the NCAA moved from Kansas City to Indianapolis, and I lived in Kansas City for a few months, and then went out to Indianapolis, and was one of the few people that had FBS football experience at the time, which I was pretty young, but it gave me a good opportunity. And then Texas had a major infractions case, and the Georgia folks, Damon Evans, who's now at SMU, and Arthur Johnson, who's at Temple, yeah, is they said, hey, like we have an opening. Would you be interested? Because they asked Georgia who they would hire. And so I was really lucky. They said, Aim, if you want to be an AD, if you can go to Texas and learn from the best. DeLoss Dodds hired me. He said, hey, if you give us the best compliance department in 5 years, we'll help you be an AD. Well, I tell him I must be really slow because it took 18 years. But I was fortunate at Texas. I did compliance and I got administration. And then I did fundraising. And I don't think if I had said, hey, I want to be an AD, that they would have some of the opportunities, but people say just do your job really well. And some of the things I've done in compliance and been exposed to the president and other people across campus. And then DeLoss just let me shadow him and be around him every day and, at the dinners with the donors. So I kind of knew everybody. So it's not a common path, but I think just saying, putting it out in the universe, I want to do this. And then, at Texas, that opportunity to just keep growing the portfolio and being in such a great place, I knew I had to wait for that right opportunity and that right one. And it happened to be here at CMU.
Yeah, and A little bit of Travis Smith background history is I am also a compliance person. So I started in compliance or academics and compliance. I did it at University of Indianapolis, Indiana State, and then a few years at IU athletics, where I really got exposed to. I was there when the transfer portal started, and IU at that time under the previous coach, like we had like the biggest roster turnaround at transfer portals. And you can learn a lot in compliance, and you build a thick skin with having to deal with so many different personalities from coaching staffs, in my opinion. But I'm also Kansas City to Indianapolis, so I didn't realize that you were there whenever they transitioned. But I always tell people, naturally, I should have worked at the NCAA by now because my dad's side of the family is in Kansas City, and my mom's is here in Indianapolis. So it's never worked out, even though it's in my backyard. But that's
Yeah,
such
it's
a
in your
cool
DNA too,
background.
apparently. Yeah,
Huh?
your DNA in your backyard. So I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
why you haven't there yet.
yeah. Well, you had
Maybe
mentioned
you'll figure it out.
DeLoss Dodds, hired you at Texas. You talked about that. Got to work with him for 10 years. So I've read and heard so many great things about his tenure with the Longhorns. Is there a good story or maybe a comment on what you learned from him that helps you today as an AD? I do like that you mentioned you give me the best compliance department in 5 years will help you become an AD and 3x that, and then you were there.
Well, I think it was technically 12 years that we might have worked together
Oh, okay.
before he actually retired. But I have well, the stories I can tell that kind of limits it. But he is a phenomenal person. I think that's one commonality I see, whether it's him, Del Conte, Mike Perrin. We talked about Lou Perkins, people that you work with. But DeLoss's lesson for me was because he knew I wanted to be an AD. So we'd be in the car driving up to Dallas. I'd pick his brain. We'd be somewhere else. And he'd always invite me to go with him. And he'd be like, Folan, are you going to talk this time? And I'd be like, well, then don't invite me. Because, of course, if I have the opportunity, and I still talk to him a lot today. But I think the thing he taught me was he's like, you got to be yourself. So I think you learn from everybody. You put yourself in great places with great people. But he and Del Conte are both incredible, and they're both very different. And there's commonality about being relatable, really, I think being empathetic and caring about people, being able to connect. But their styles are different, and everybody's always different. So I think one of the best things I learned from him is I learned a lot of about the business and traits, but we're different and we've had different experiences. So I think you take the best, you enhance yourself, and you learn how to be the best version of yourself, but it's important to be yourself. I'm not going to be Dodds. I'm not going to be Del Conte. I've got to be myself. But I actually think being around great people in great places really helps you accentuate the best of yourself and then learn from, what you need to grow in.
Yeah, I think what I've interesting is hearing you talk about is two different situations. You've mentioned how he let you shadow you and come to the fundraising dinners, and I mean, is that something like what was that experience like whenever he just let you kind of go up there and just like listen in and observe? How many is that? That sounds like it's like the equivalent of like another degree, like a little master's degree of leadership. It's just being able to be a fly on the wall and be able to ask questions to him.
Well, it's funny. I got to have breakfast in Phoenix last week with Gene Smith and Sheila Smith, and we were talking about this because Gene's a boy from Cleveland. I'm a girl from Portland, Maine, and some of the places you've been. And I said, I think a lot of things are exposure. She's just been really fortunate to be in incredible places with incredible people with, just all kinds of leadership opportunities and shaping the country and leading into collegiate athletics. And I think it is. It's the people and the network and what you're exposed to. And then when you're at those institutions, they're usually leading the way in the country and the business schools, just in their areas of study, the universities and the power and the gravitas and the people. But I do know how fortunate I am to just being around it. And if you have that opportunity to just look, learn, listen, and see how people do things, eventually someday, if you're fortunate, you get the opportunity to lead and get to do that yourself.
Yeah, and Gene Smith's someone that I've always wanted to be able to have a conversation with, even if he doesn't do a lot of podcasts. So it'd be great to have him on and his wisdom, but I've heard such great things that at some point I hope to have maybe even just like a phone call with him. So that's cool. I mean, talk about these people that you've built your career going up with. That's just awesome to hear that he doesn't seem like he's like going sitting in a beach chair all day for retirement. I know he's been staying active in the industry.
Yeah, I think he has to turn things down. And Dan Guerrero was my mentor through the,
Wow.
I think it was the 1AD, which ended up being lead one. I told you I'm
Yeah.
a little tremendous, so I'm dating myself. But he's somebody that spent a lot of time, and I said I was a slow study. I had a lot of great people around me. It took me 18 years because I just, I needed some extra help and tutoring, but just fortunate, like you get a lot of great people, and this business is a people business. So there's people that you were kind of like interns with, and now people are in the chair, and people will be like, "Oh, when did you meet?" And you kind of laugh, and you're like, "I've known them for 20 years." So I think the commonality about this business and really great people is they're really good people that care about the student athlete, they care about their colleagues, and they have invested and continue to invest. So I'm grateful for that exposure and for those relationships for sure.
Well, your background kind of reminds me of my mentor. So Maddie White, she was, she recruited me to IU athletics when we needed to kind of upgrade our eligibility system, and that's how I got started at IU. She had been there like 20 years, goes through a layoff with the budget cuts, but then she's now at Delaware, already got promoted at Delaware. But she should be if she wants to be. She could be a great AD somewhere because of the all the stuff she did over the years at IU. We're seeing a lot of the success of IU athletics right now, and Maddie White had a huge, or Dr. Maddie White, she got her doctorate now. Dr. White had a huge imprint on a lot of things with the football program, and so yeah, I think sometimes I don't know if search terms do this or just in general, you don't see a lot of the AD hires now where they've stayed at one place for so long and then went on there. And so you're kind of paving that way of obviously having success at Central Michigan with your fundraising efforts too. That I thought that was what stood out to me is your kind of consistency at Texas, studying from afar. I do want to switch to football. So you've also another thing you've gotten to do is you made somewhat of what a non-traditional hire in your football head coach search last year. It comes off to me like you went and found the right coach that fit your institution and not just looking for like a splash hire to win the press conference. Maybe it still won the press conference because I wasn't following that search a year ago, but I think there are about 10 or 15 of your AD colleagues in the FBS that will be going through this process right now, or 2 months ago. It seems like it's earlier and earlier, but can you think back to that search whenever you had to do that and explain what you were specifically looking for, like the process you used to go out and hire a football coach and why you ultimately landed on Coach Drinkall?
I think we kind of touched upon it. Like I was fortunate at Texas to be a part of or around a lot of that, so I learned a lot there. Mac Brown is also somebody who's like a dad to me, and he was helpful in the process, and so it helps when you have people that really know what they're doing. Had Kyle and Bob Bowlesby helped in that search, and I've known Bob since I think I did his peer review visit at Iowa way back in the early 2000s. So before his AD at Stanford and commissioner of the Big 12. So I think it's those relationships with people that really have the experience that you trust. And then, it helps some of them look at me like, wait a minute, why are you asking me? You know what you're doing. And so sometimes at that point, like it's just having that brain trust and that network. You do have to do a lot of it yourself because it's highly confidential, and the way the agents are set up and the industry set up, like there's a lot of people that have a vested interest in making it what they need and not maybe what's best for your institution. But I will say I also spent a lot of time with Roy Kramer. I mentioned won a national championship here and obviously has been a leader in this industry, and just more ways than we can count. Herb Duramity here, they're both NFF inductees. I asked them, I said, hey, you guys have been the most successful people here. What does it take? And they talked about being innovative, and they talked about fitting in with the community. They talked about being hardworking. And, they didn't really tell me this person, but they told me the qualities. I called all of our, football greats, whether I could connect with them or not. And I took a lot of people's opinions into that room. And again, you bring your experience, but I think to find the best fit here, it was finding out what historically has really worked well here and has been the thing that's been the secret sauce for Central Michigan. So, Matt was part of the people. They were crushing it at Army, so I don't think it's so non-traditional. I laugh because everybody, when you hire somebody from Army, goes, oh, the triple option, and they feel like those coaches have never coached anywhere before and they can't coach anywhere else. I think it's everywhere. You find a great coach, a great person who can lead young men. The one thing about West Point is there any better case study in leadership? So Matt had gone and worked under great coaches and studied all 6 systems. I was, kind of intrigued that he went to Army because it was the last system he didn't study, knowing that besides theirs, there are many places you're probably going to do that. Probably not, but I love that he was a student of the game. He was very innovative, which Roy and Herb said was really important here. He's a Midwest boy, Midwest roots, so I think he really was a good fit. I said, look, this is kind of a blue collar jeans and boots town. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. And so it was kind of interesting. And his wife, Kim, is phenomenal. I always say she won the job. And Herb Durambody and Roy Kramer had Sarah Joe, and McElwain and Karen McElwain. They all had great women that led the way. So that was an important part of the process. And that is, something that's a family affair. So one of the key secrets I would say is make sure you bring the spouse in and that they're all in and part of it, because that will be it's integral to what I've seen with Mac and Sally Brown and some of the great coaches that I've seen. It's a partnership. So if they do have a significant other, and if they don't, like, that's fine. I just think you go through the process, and like I said, I lean on my network, and then I just at the end of the day go with what I think is the best fit. And also the student athletes, we don't get them to be in process, but we said, what qualities do you want? Who are you looking for? They wanted a coach's coach, a player's coach. And Matt has high standards coming from West Point. I think he had high standards probably going into West Point, but that just probably levels it up. And the students here are just thriving. They're playing really hard, and they love them. So it's kind of the perfect combination of what we needed at the right time.
Yeah, and I think when I said the non-traditional, I wasn't, yeah, definitely an Army. I think I was more leaning, and I should have prefaced this, but he was I think an NAIA head coach to kind of get his, I mean, because you're talking about, yes, the discipline from Army, I see that as an asset, no matter being a position coach or a coordinator for sure. I was thinking more about an FBS school hiring someone whose only head coach experience, I believe, was at an NAIA school, but having success there and then leading into the other stops that he's had along his career, and obviously ending at Army. But I thought that was more the interesting piece of it, is because right now I think it's risky. I mean, what do I know, right? But I think it is risky to go with someone that has no experience as a coordinator or a head coach in their background. But if he has already been a head coach, no matter the level, you're still, if anything, you're running more things. You're doing with less resources, and you're running a whole program and building that. So that's more what I was thinking of that. And did that concern you at all? Or I'm sure critics maybe were maybe critical of, like, okay, he's been a head coach, but it was NAIA. Was that ever brought up as a positive or negative from the outside?
I thought it was a positive because he'd actually already been a head coach. It'd be a different level for sure. He had been coordinator at Army too, so he had that experience. He played at Iowa. I kind of liked he had been at all different places, because here's what I will say is that I had been at Georgia, Connecticut as a student athlete, Texas, NCAA. Right when I come here, I knew that it's just a group of 6, not a level I had experienced before. So I think being innovative, I think figuring it out, and he kind of always had success at whatever level and where he was. And so I thought that breadth of experience would really help him. And we talked about it. I said, look, the thing for you is it's a different level than an AIA. So we both got to make sure when we're running a relay race, we don't want to run the same leg, and we don't want to drop the baton. So we have to kind of figure that out. And you do with anybody. But I think, just being an Army and playing at Iowa, like, he's been here and seen it. And, he did have coordinator experience. He had head coaching experience, and he left those roles always for what was better for him as a student of the game and to develop skills he didn't have. So I like that he wasn't always chasing titles, but I think he really had a well-rounded background to be able to step in and lead here. So, and I do think I thought about this when we were going into the season. Well, at least he's not the first time he's trying to organize a staff and do all those things, right? Like, so you pick somebody who's a coordinator who's never been in the head coaching chair. And like, I hadn't been an AD. I'd sat next to the chair at like the biggest brand, the biggest budget for 18 years. But when you go a little bit over, he at least had that experience. So some of those things aren't going to shake him as much. Like, he's called a game before and been the one calling it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, I remember I've talked about this type of process to ADs. It became more popular in basketball, where someone would bring. So I was at Indiana State when we went to the men's basketball, went to the NIT championship a few years ago, and should have made March Madness. I'm still very critical of that decision. But we rim out a three-pointer to win the game in the NIT championship. But Coach Schertz was a D2 product. And that was important to the AD of an FCS mid-major. It's like, okay, I can go get this coach. He's been a head coach for a long time. And yes, there's a different level, but he's going to be, this is an upgrade for resources, still an upgrade in salary for him and his staff. But he can win here. And it's a program builder mentality. You see that with Kurt Signetti. I think everyone's now going to be trying to find their Kurt Signetti. I'm a big Scott Dolson fan from working at IU Athletics, and I worked for the president there too. And I think they did their research on a program builder, and that's what I thought about whenever you look at the schools that your coach had been at, Army, playing at Iowa, and then being a head coach. Midwest is not going to scare him away. He loves it there, it seemed like. So I thought it was exactly what more coaches need to do, or more ADs need to do. But I just study you. I don't have to make these decisions. So kudos to you for making. And then you're about to kind of go into back-to-back weeks of Wednesday night games here in the MAC as we're speaking on a Tuesday, and one's at home and another on the road. I'm just kind of curious because I'm about to go. By the time this airs, it will be known that I already went to Toledo versus Northern Illinois. I'm excited about my first MACtion experience. But what are the good parts of MACtion football games during the week? And then maybe what are some of its challenges from a perspective of the student athletes and from the perspective of an athletic director?
So the good parts is I think you're in that national window, and there's a lot of people that are watching that game. I get a lot of texts from Austin, Athens, wherever you are, like, hey, watching your team, cheering for you guys, fire up chips. And I think being that only show with the brand is, helped our league a lot. It's something I studied when I came in because I was like, it still is an adjustment for me. Kind of used to every game being on Saturday. Like sometimes I'm like, what? Tuesday, Wednesday? Like it, um, throws me off still sometimes because it's non-traditional, but I think I'm settling in a little bit here.
What do
I
you
think
do
the
on
challenge
Saturdays whenever you just find
that's
a soccer
we
game
have
or something else?
Saturdays. Yeah, it's like what? I mean, you have soccer, volleyball, basketball, whatever you've got like that time of year, right? But it's kind of what's weird is like, oh God, you just crunch all the madness into the regular work week. But I think the thing that challenged, like I looked at like, does it hurt our ticket sales and are people not here? I'll tell you, November in Michigan, if it's a Saturday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, you might be getting the same result, and sometimes it plays that out. But I do think the national television exposure for our institutions and with higher education and the challenges it's facing, it's probably good to be in those windows where we get more exposure, more visibility. I don't know if we moved them to Saturdays, if it really would help the crowds and all that. And we've had a lot of success here and we have great crowds. It's just that time of year is challenging. So I think we have to be creative and find ways to evolve in the new space and the new landscape and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I could imagine like I have young children, so like I'll bring my 9-year-old to a Purdue basketball game because we're season ticket holders, even though I'm an IU person. My in-laws are Purdue season ticket holders. So we'll take him there, but I would never take him to like a night game outside in the cold stadium in November in Indianapolis. But you're right. I mean, is it really going to be that big of a difference of a Saturday versus like a Wednesday night? So the timing of the year is good because they still get their warm Saturdays for the first half of the season, right? What is student athletes? Do you get the sense that they still enjoy it, like getting the weeknight national TV exposure for some of them, or like, are you able to kind of read the vibe of the athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just something we do, and it's a month, so it's a couple of games, and then usually one of them is right during the Thanksgiving weekend. So you're talking about 2 or 3 week time span, and like we have a weekend coming up this week because we actually play on Wednesday of next week. So I think there's plus, and if you just adapt, I think if it was all year round, like the academics would be a challenge. I think where it's just 2 weeks a year, it's very manageable, especially with the support services that you have. Um, and you talk about you just take your son, and we got solutions for that. We call that like hospitality areas. We get you some club tickets, and you're inside, and you're warm, and you're having good food, and you and your kids have a good time. So there's a solution for everything. But it was really non-traditional for me. I had never being in the SEC and the Big 12, like I just had not experienced it. And it was an adjustment. And like people's staff meetings are on Tuesdays and not Fridays. And you're like, what is going on here? But I think it is, it's unique to the MAC, and I think it served it well. And I think it brings a lot of excitement and a lot of visibility. So it's something that I feel fortunate to be a part of. I mean, we've been on Good Morning America with the snowstorm, and our kids are out there getting national visibility. So I think they are just so excited to play. And again, if it was a long time, I think you'd really have to look. I think with what it is, it's just something that you manage through, and it hasn't really created many problems for us.
Well, hopefully, upset fans that have YouTube TV and may miss the game on ESPN, hopefully they just for the next 2 weeks, if it's not resolved, hopefully they don't send their anger towards you, and they know that you don't control the negotiations between the YouTube and the ESPN networks, right? So hopefully you don't
Well,
receive
Travis,
any of that.
there, you're going to get you if you're worried about criticism and you're worried about being blamed for things that you have no control over. You got the wrong job.
Oh, I imagine the skin is thick for an athletic director that's overseeing an FBS football program. So let's switch to fundraising. So yeah, I know this is a team approach, but the department under you has really broken fundraising records since you became the AD. Just kind of including setting the record, I think, for the institution just this past year, and maybe that just makes pressure to keep building it now. But what was your kind of initial plan and focus on fundraising when you first came to CMU, which obviously COVID was a thing then, but what was kind of your vision that you cast during that search and selection that you were going to bring fundraising to Central Michigan?
Well, I think what is the same in the footprint Austin here is you kind of figure out where are you, and then where do you need to go to elevate it. And I think here it was, doing a master facilities plan. We had the same process in Austin. And then it's looking at where's the vision going? What do we need the most? Is talking to a lot of people, getting the coaches' needs. Like you don't determine that on your own, right? You listen a lot and you ask people, what do you think it takes to be successful? What do you think you need? You get the university involved. And then I think it was here just painting some bigger visions. Like a lot of times we come in and people are like, well, we need new carpets. And I was like, we need to redo the whole locker room. So we don't need to just raise $20,000 for carpets. We need to do the whole thing for 200,000. And people were like, wow, but it's hard enough to get to 20. Well, just millionaires and billionaires are big time people that can give you money. They're not inspired by carpets and but they're inspired by, hey, if the student athletes need a locker room and you can get better recruits and here's the experience and that hasn't been done and it's needed, that inspires them to give back. And they were usually a student themselves and they know what they're doing and the impact that has for the university and the exposure and the brand. So I think it was just finding what we needed and then being able to translate it. I think it was always here. There's 250,000 alums at CMU. That's half the Texas footprint. It's bigger than my alma mater's footprint, which a lot of people wouldn't know. And I think the difference is sports. And so there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of potential. And I think it was just the exposure at Texas of how things work and where those spaces work, and then seeing them here and connecting to them that maybe hadn't been tapped into before. We're doing a $25 million campaign. I said it was 5 years. It's really 3 because the first 2 years we weren't fundraising. It's just COVID, the time, and even just acceptance and building relationships. We're at 23. We'll probably close out that 25 this year. And I knew we had to roll into more. I think some of the pushback, people thought 25 million was a big number. It is different from ours as $1 billion, but it's just you're going to meet a culture where it is and bring it along. Even when you see it, you do need to figure out where is everybody, where do they need to go? Where can we go? And you figure those all out together, but it's just casting the big visions. It's connecting to the people that understand the impact and that have the philanthropic opportunity. And we have people that are incredible, like at every place. Like it's all relative, right? Like some people can give $100 and that's way more impactful than somebody else that's giving $1 million. It's just all relative. So I think it's appreciating everybody at what level they can give, but then it's also tapping into all the levels that are there. And I think sometimes here we weren't tapping into what was our full potential. And so it's just giving the picture so that can happen.
Yeah, and so I brought PILYTIX on as a sponsor after having their CEO on, and that's one that we just had a conversation about mainly about donor fatigue, but then maybe some solutions that he was thinking people should consider. One of them, similar to what you just said, was really like you have people that maybe they're donating, like you said, 100, and maybe they are going on the website and they're showing interest on data tracking that, hey, they might be more interested in if you reach out to them. So is part of like first, is donor fatigue real? Do you think that's happening right now? And then two, what are some strategies that you all deploy to kind of combat that? Because what Jim and I talked about from PILYTIX was really about trying to get more people involved and kind of expand your existing pool too. Obviously, still try to go after, yeah, the big dollars, but he had kind of a point of like everyone, every type of institution, similar to you said, every place is it's relative. He was like, think about who you have that maybe you just haven't reached out to because the dollar point wasn't that high. But they still are supporters, and they're thinking about how they can continue to kind of support their home university. So maybe is donor fatigue real, and then maybe what are the strategies that you all kind of combat it with?
I think donor fatigue is really a thing. And I will tell you, when I started at Texas, I think that was 2011, 12. Um, I went around to the top 10 donors and I said, okay, tell me what we need to stop, start, and continue. And a lot of them said, hey, you keep coming back to me and I don't see the person behind me. And the average age was 82. So top 10 average age was 82. And they just said, some of them had money, but I need to know that it's going to continue and it's not just me. So I think that can happen everywhere. And so it is real and it's a thing. But a lot of times I haven't met somebody with money that isn't smart. Right. And so they know what they're doing and their impact and how they're doing it. And it's our responsibility to make sure that their money is advancing, that it's making an impact, and that we're doing what we said. And so I think people, when they're inspired and they have that money that they can go ahead and spend philanthropically and make an impact. And I think that's at $100 or it's at, $100 million gift. It is the same. Sometimes there's different projects, but it's the same. They need to know that the trust, what you say and what you do is going to happen. And they need to know that they're giving this money to make this thing happen because that's their passion and where they want their impact to be. And you do it. I mean, I don't think we can expect people to just give us their money. We're all human beings. We work hard for our money, every single person. So what is your legacy? What impact are you making? How do you want to do it? And I think it's real that you have that responsibility to make sure that you follow through and you're always inspiring. And again, people work hard for their money at whatever level and whatever amount. And if they're going to spend it with you, making sure that you're making an impact and that you're doing something with their money, and they're going to hold you to it. And they should, I would as a donor.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, I feel like there's donor fatigue, and then yes, other strategies to kind of increase fundraising. But there's also this kind of I joked with an AD that's been an AD for like 20 years when I met with him recently, and he's talking about like being creative and raising revenue is not a new thing, but like we've kind of cast it as like, oh, you got to get creative with different revenue streams, and he was like, I've been tasked with doing that my whole career. It's just that everybody just kind of called it fundraising, but you're trying to look for different partnerships. So creative revenue streams is what I'm curious about. Is there anything that Central Michigan is now kind of looking at doing to just get creative, whether that's corporate naming rights on athletic facilities? I know some schools have challenges with that because of existing policy, or years ago they already had a fundraiser that then it's named after, and so then you try to get creative. Oh, well, maybe we can name the field at the stadium, but I mean, it's just in the last 5 years, I feel like corporate naming rights is becoming more of a reality in college athletics. I study higher education. I know it was a huge no-no a long time ago for commercialization of higher ed, but you have to be creative now. So is that something that you all are kind of looking into?
Well, I agree with whichever AD you talk to. I laughed when people were like, we need all this money. We have NIL. I'm like, we always needed more money. And then I was at Cal's and it didn't get to me, but I was on a panel and somebody said, if you have all the money in the world, what do you do with it right now? And I was like, well, I've been at Texas and it's the biggest brand with the biggest budget. Guess what? You never have enough money. Like that's one of the things I have learned from there is you never have enough. So like you mentioned namings and corporate namings, I think these are all been things that have been in play, right? Like a lot of it is not new. I think with trends and data analytics, we're looking at doing some of that. AI, like you look at doing some of those things. I think you're always refining and evolving and looking for new ways, but a lot of those things are not new, right? We just look at doing them different or better, or how do you engage and make that happen? But like rip off and duplicate was a big thing Del Conte always said was his R&D. And so I know the pro space is usually more innovative, and have met some people, CMU alum that's Chief Innovation Officer for Player 15 Group. And, we talked about a lot of times we have to look at pro space or other spaces. In college sports, we do, anywhere from usually 16 is the minimum Division I up to 30 if you're at a, Big 10, Pac-12 school. And the reality is we've always done a lot of sports and not done one very well. So the pro space does one sport or a couple very well. And so they're usually more innovative. I mean, I like one of the things is sports gaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if we don't play the games, you know, or a lot of them, not all of them, obviously, pro space, and we're getting no money off of it, it just blows my mind with where we are. Like, even if it paid for scholarships, and I know it's more complicated because obviously looking at that, but I think it's just always knowing, and it's always optimizing. Where you're going? Have you optimized that amount? Um, are you set up in the future? And you're looking to your left and right, right? Is somebody doing something that we're not doing? And I think the reality is, so you say it was driveway to driveway, and now it's a 24/7 cycle, right? With technology. Fan was when they left their driveway to when they got home. Well, now we know they can get on the internet at any time, any hour, they can consume. So I don't know if the game has changed. I think things evolve in society, and we just always have to adapt. But I think we're always looking at what we do and how we do it better. Where are we? Where is somebody doing something? We have a gap that we need to close, and then have had the fortunate experience. If you're at Texas and you're at the top, how are you raising that bar, and what's the next thing that you can do?
So, one thing that I'm curious about, because I did a project in my doctorate program on like is it was like a institutional research project and revenue focused, and I just used my limited Adobe skills, Photoshop skills, and added a jersey patch. This is like 4 years ago. Jersey patch to an IU football jersey for the project because I was in an IU class. Now it's becoming more of a thing. Like some schools are, some ADs I've talked to on the podcast and off of it, they're already ready for a uniform patch. They've already kind of investigated it. And then that way, the moment, if it's in January that it's okayed, we can slap it on there and announce it. So is that something that you think is going to be a reality? And then is your team already kind of focused on investigating that type of solution?
Yeah, I think we've had like monumental shifts about every 6 months over the last 5 years. And I think the financial realities of where we are is where things are opening up and changing previous stances. Remember beer sales was a taboo and it's a college game, and we're not doing that. And, it's here. And I think you're always ready and poised to try to capitalize and get people lined up where you can take that opportunity. So, yeah, we're doing it like everybody, and we're constantly looking for those. And that's our job, right? It's try to be out in front, try to know what opportunities we have, and use your institution and what fits, and making that happen. We're affiliated with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, so we will optimize revenues and do revenue streams. But we really have the privilege of being one of the 3 schools affiliated with Native American tribe, and so for us, some of those things look a little different, but we are truly honored. And we will work with our internal partner, the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, and continue to find ways to have leading experience in the MAC, CMU. It's why I came here. It's always been a top contender in the MAC across the board, and we'll continue to do that. So it's our responsibility to have the best student athlete experience, best fan experience, and be a leader in the MAC. And we're always looking for ways to do that and combining all those things together.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how everything shakes out whenever it's all allowed to do and what schools do. But I imagine your meetings about what the possibilities are is just endless in thinking about these different revenue strategies. So I want to end it. We're recording this in November, so we're heading into college basketball season. So kind of want to just take us through. Most of these people listening are, either ADs or deputies or soon to be athletic administrators. Take us behind the scenes of what Amy Folan is doing, where you're at, and what you're thinking about during a Chips men's and women's basketball game.
Well, we had our, first 2 official last night. The women were down at Georgia State, and the men were here at home. And I have Kristen Haney, who is a Michigan State darling and went on and won a WNBA championship. She's heading into her 3rd season, and is doing great things. We didn't have the result we wanted last night. I didn't get to watch because I was watching it on my phone just via the score updates. I couldn't watch the game because I was at the men's game watching Coach Bronkema coach his first game. And he got the win against App State. So it was good for him to start off his collegiate Division I coaching career with a win. But, you have that going on, and you have, we got volleyball, and, our soccer just wrapped up, and we've got cross country, and We've got football still going, and really this time of year is the one that's super crazy because you have just about every sport participating. We haven't quite, baseball, softball just wrapping up, lacrosse, their individuals, they'll be back going. But this is the time of year where you've been going since August 1st, probably 24/7, 7 days a week. And now you just go into hyperdrive because you're adding all these extra contests. But you know what? That's what we do it for. Like, it's great to see the student athletes that have worked so hard. The fans are so excited. And it's just a great time of year, and just feel fortunate to be a part of it.
Well, Amy Folan, Central Michigan Athletic Director, thanks so much for joining me on Higher Ed Athletics.
Thanks for having me, Travis. Fire up chips.